11th week, first day, the power of the sea. I watch the sea surge and pound forward against the rocky ledges with a leisurely, effortless motion, a motion grounded in gravity and governed by the law of the tides. Before me lay 4 huge rocks, and the waves roll through their crevices like 5 huge fingers. The fingers seemed to have power enough to clasp and hold the rocks had they cared to do so, or to bend and destroy them. But they did not need to do that. Their gesture of power turned into a caress as they withdrew. They seemed to feel, why should I destroy or yet cling to that which is already mine? Here and there cliffs towered up high, too lofty to be reached by the sea even for a caress. I don't belong to you. I am above you, they seemed to say. You shall never possess me. To them the sea merely unsheathed its white teeth in a smile that rippled along the whole shoreline of the island, and that afternoon the sun sent a rainbow ribbon of light and carried a river of water to the clouds. The next day it fell in torrents down upon those cliffs, sweeping their faces, caressing their stiff necks, and patting them tenderly upon their heads, as though to say, "You cannot escape me after all, O land." Yes, the whole round earth is held in the hollow of the sea's mighty hand. The land, rigid and firm, is possessed and ruled, controlled and given life by the sea itself, because the sea knows how to relax utterly and be utterly obedient to the laws of the tide, of the sun, of the universe. And little man, if he gives himself completely to the great laws of the spirit and of life, to the tides and the sun, perhaps he too shall hold the world in the hollow of his hand. Glenn Clark's choice of scripture for today is from the book of Job, chapter 38, verses 4, 8, and 16. Where wast thou when I laid the foundation of the earth? Declare, if thou hast understanding, or who shut up the sea with doors when it brake forth, as if it had issued out of the womb? Hast thou entered into the springs of the sea, or hast thou walked in the search of the depth? 11th week, second day, Hinds' feet. Years ago, a great revelation came to me as I pondered a strange statement in the Bible. He maketh my feet like hinds' feet, and setteth me upon my high places. No animal has just such perfect correlation of its front and rear feet as a female deer or the hind. And this was the blinding revelation. As the feet of the hind are to the mountain sides, so is the mind of man to the heights of living. And as the rear feet of the hind are to its front feet, so is the subconscious mind of man to his conscious mind. And as the creature with the most perfect correlation of front and rear feet is the surest to reach the mountain top in safety, so a person with the most perfect correlation between his conscious and his subconscious mind is sure to reach the heights of living. Our lips speak the thoughts of our conscious minds, but only the heart speaks the thought of our subconscious mind. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Out of the heart comes the issues of life, and when the lips and the heart are aligned, when they track together with the absolute sureness of the hind's feet tracking together, then nothing is impossible, whether it be the climbing of mountains or the casting of mountains into the sea. Ask yourself how many things you have done in your life with all your strength, all your mind, all your heart, and all your soul. In other words, how often have you tracked with all 4 feet? The world, the church, the community, the family, and every individual needs the leadership of persons who have learned to track sure-footedly to high places. To climb with hinds' feet, one's eye must be single, one's heart must be single, one's faith must be sure. Glenn Clark's choice of scripture for today is from the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verses 22 and 24. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. No man can serve 2 masters, For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. 11th week, 3rd day, prayer for the church. Jesus said of Peter, "Upon this rock I will build my church." And yet, after such a tremendous statement of faith in one man, the Master himself predicted Peter would deny him 3 times in one night. Though the church was founded upon the rock, it has denied Christ in 3 ways, the same ways that Peter denied him even before the night of betrayal. By largely avoiding a healing ministry, the church reflects Peter's inadequacy to cope with the problem of the epileptic boy, whose father told Jesus, "I spake to my disciples that they should cast him, the dumb spirit, out, and they could not." Jesus turned to those around him and cried, "O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you?" And he cured the boy immediately. By virtually putting its blessing upon warfare as a means of settling international disputes, the church follows Peter's example of angrily slicing off the ear of the servant who accosted his master. Yet Jesus commanded Peter to put back his sword and heal the ear of his enemy. That night he gave himself up to the forces of evil, yet he later prayed from the cross, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." By avoiding reference to many of the most vital problems in our society, such as alcoholism, racial prejudice, economic injustice, and political corruption, the church has tried to protect its leaders from public criticism and argument. When Peter begged Jesus to save himself and turn away from Jerusalem, the young master replied, "Get thee behind me, Satan, thou art an offense unto me. For thou savorest not the things that be of God, but those that be of men." After his resurrection, Jesus appeared to Peter and gave him the opportunity to cancel out his denials with 3 amending affirmations. We in our churches may receive the same forgiveness for past weaknesses and begin to prove our faith. Glenn Clark's choice of scripture for today is from the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verses 24 through 27. "Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And every one that heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man, who built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon the house, and it fell. And great was the fall of it." 11th week, 4th day. What are you? You attract unto yourself not the condition you ask, not the condition you expect, not the condition you want, but you attract unto yourself the condition that accords with what you are. Are you a giving person? Then the world will give much to you. Are you a getting person? Then the world will get much away from you. Do you give powerfully? Then the power will come to you. Do you give lovingly? Then love will come to you. Do you give beautifully? Then beauty will come to you. Do you give abundantly? Then abundance will come to you. What shall you give? Most beautiful, most powerful, most wonderful of all gifts is yourself, your faith, your trust, your love. Trust men, trust God, trust events. Do not have love, be love. And then you will attract all the goodness, all the perfection that the world has in store for you. You will draw the very kingdom of heaven itself down to the earth. When your power to love becomes like God's power to love, then your power to create will become like God's power to create. And the moment that you become love, henceforth, whatever you ask shall be yours. Whatever you expect shall be yours. Whatever you want shall be yours. But henceforth you shall ask for and expect and want only that which is in accord with the spirit of infinite love. Clark's choice of scripture for today is from Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. 11th week, 5th day. Banner be Christians. It was a glorious night of midsummer. A moon at full and a host of stars lit the whole bee garden with a soft crystalline light, while ever so slight a breeze tipped the treetops. At the door of one of the hives, the old beekeeper came to a stop, and we listened to a sound like distant sea waves advancing and retreating. It was a sibilant note and persistent. "Those are the fanner bees at work," whispered the beekeeper. "It is their job to keep the hive sweet and fresh. They are standing inside with their heads lowered, facing the center of the hive. Their wings are moving so rapidly that if you could see in, you would think they were just a gray mist. These bees draw out the bad air through the one side of the hive, while pure air is sucked in from the other." As I stood listening to the fanner bees, I felt strangely close to one of nature's great wonders, the mystery of bee life. The old beekeeper lit a candle and held it near the hive. Instantly the light went out, extinguished by the strong air current. Those infinitesimal bee wings moving in unison could make a draught to quench a candle. Think of it! If there was enough fanner bee Christians as keen on their jobs as those bees are on theirs, whispered my friend, wouldn't the world be sweet and fresh? And I thought of the shut-ins, the aged and invalid, who think their active days of service are past. And I knew that if they could think of themselves as fanner bees and could be united in spirit with the others like them in this nation, the power of their prayers would be fabulous. Glenn Clark's choice of scripture for today is from the book of Matthew, chapter 8, verses 14 and 15. "And when Jesus was come into Peter's house, he saw his wife's mother laid and sick of a fever. And he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she arose and ministered unto them." 11th week, 6th day. My yoke is easy. Because Jesus hung upon the cross, we do not need to hang upon it. But in this weak and erring world, no one who would help a brother can avoid at times bearing his cross with him. Those of us who do not have the alcoholic's appetite must help the alcoholic. We who were born into homes of love must bear some of the burdens of the criminal born into a house of hate. When we do that, the cross ceases to be a cross and becomes a yoke instead, uniting us in loving service and fellowship with those whom we may help. Even greater than the promise of immortality symbolized by the open tomb is the promise of blessing from the sinner and outcast derived from the cross of the atoning Christ. Until one understands the law of the cross, the law of vertical and horizontal poles, he is illiterate on the subject of humanity. Jesus explained the vertical pole in the words, "Love God," and the horizontal pole in the words, "Love man." Upon this cross, or law, hang all the laws and the prophets. Thus the cross is the visible symbol of our collective sin and divine forgiveness. All religions incorporate in some way the ministry of love, but only Christianity visions the heights expressed in the Sermon on the Mount. Grace is an attribute of God. Mercy is an attribute of man. When in our zeal for the grace of God, we blot out our exercise of mercy toward man, we are letting the zeal of our house eat us up. Glenn Clark's choice of scripture for today is from the book of Matthew, chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." 11th week, 7th day, in remembrance of him. The first Lord's Supper opened a channel of communion directly with God. We, as disciples of Jesus, have a choice between two ways of using this great event that first occurred 2,000 years ago in the upper room in Galilee. We may participate in the service as a mere ecclesiastical form, a religious rite, separate from life, which we can enjoy at certain times only. Instead of charging admission, as does a theater or cinema, we can take up a collection to pay the curator's salary, or we may participate in Holy Communion as a vital part of our religious life, experience the cleansing from sin, and become filled with the living Christ. Too often, we good churchgoers bow before the great incandescent transfigured author of the little drama of the upper room one day a week, or once a month, and all the other days we forget him. The far-reaching implications of that event which took place in our church are lost to us as soon as the church doors open and we emerge into the everyday routine of our mundane lives. Think what would happen in this old world if everyone who partook of the Lord's Supper in the sanctuary would go forth carrying the light of Christ's consciousness in his soul. That light, shining wherever he went, would inspire others to glorify the Father also. For we have the sacred privilege of renewing contact with the source of light and love at any given moment. Holy Communion is a reminder of that promise. Glenn Clark's choice of scripture for today is from the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 1. Take heed that ye do not your alms before men, to be seen of them, otherwise ye have no reward of your Father which is in heaven.